move on to our public hearings. Item 8.1, adopt resolution number 18-3208, proposing a $5 million permanent adjustment to the 1979-80 base expenditure limitation of Lake Havasu City. Mr. Knudsen.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll be handling this agenda item this evening. Discussions have been happening amongst the council and staff for a number of years, and certainly I've been involved in a number of these conversations since I've started here, but this is the council's first formal action in terms of the permanent base adjustment, and council will be making a determination about the next steps in terms of a August 28th election. So talk real briefly about what it is and some information regarding the permanent base adjustment. This is a law that was introduced back in 1980 and identifies that the cities and towns in Arizona must operate within the budgets that were identified back in 1979-1980 fiscal year. Keep in mind, Lake Havasu City was incorporated in 1978, so a lot of things have happened since that time, and a lot of changes have occurred in Lake Havasu City since this law was introduced and our base limit was first decided by the state of Arizona. So coming up in the fall in August, voters will make a determination whether or not the city should adjust its base limit. And right now the base limit is 4.7 million, and the proposal from staff that will be voted on by council this evening would increase the base amount by 5 million, or from 4.7 million to $9.7 million. But there's 77 of the 91 cities in Arizona have already addressed this issue either through a permanent base adjustment or what's called a home rule election. So this is something that's been going on in Arizona, and elections have taken place with the vast majority of cities and towns since the early 80s. One of the things that people find interesting in conversations about the permanent base adjustment and how we determine levels of that dictate the level of services that we provide to our residents is what the city's had to do in the last few years in terms of continuation of these services. So when debt is issued, you can circumvent the base adjustment and in terms of continuing those services. So it's one of the things that continues to be an option, and whether or not the voters decide to move forward with the permanent base adjustment or not, debt is always an option, although it's not always the most fiscally responsible. A lot of questions come in with regards to tax increases, fees increases, and how that relates to the permanent base adjustment or Prop 409, and the answer is that it doesn't. So this is not a tax increase. It's not a tax decrease. No matter how you look at it, a vote yes or a vote no will have zero impact on the taxes or fees that the city collects. It will have an impact on the resources that are used to provide services to our residents. A few pictures here, just in terms of I talked a little bit about that. This was a law that starts back in 1979 and 1980 fiscal years, and just some pictures here of what Havasu looked like and what was happening in Lake Havasu City back in 1980 compared to what's happening today. And so some of these pictures show what the island looked like back in 1980 as opposed to today. Major changes. We had 0 parks in 1980 in Lake Havasu City. Today there are 15 parks, including Cypress Park I just mentioned, Rotary Park, Sarah Park, many facilities in the community that provide recreation activities to kids and residents of all ages. The Aquatic Center was something that didn't exist back in 1980. Our sewer infrastructure, the many millions of dollars that the city expended to protect the Colorado River and Lake Havasu and provide services to our residents. Now we have maintenance of this infrastructure that must be cared for by the city. Things as simple as water treatment plants. Back in 1980, the city was pumping water from wells from the ground, treating with chlorine and distributing that water straight to our faucets. So there's no immediate health concerns, but now today what we do is we have water treatment plants in place that improve the quality of water and eliminate some manganese problems that I guess existed prior to the installation of those water treatment plants. So, longtime residents of Lake Havasu City might remember these manganese issues in terms of dark, gooey substances that used to come out of the faucet. I've been told that in some cases it looked like chocolate milk. So, these are services that the city provides to protect the health and welfare of our residents, and it's something that we've introduced as a service since 1980. Real simple things as paved roads, stoplights that weren't here in 1980. So not only were these facilities constructed, but now there's maintenance schedules for these facilities and the need for the city to maintain these services and assets for the community. Animal control, we now do a jail, provide jail services. We do that in-house, and which was a money-saving change from in recent years, as opposed to the county providing some of those services, saved us dollars. And we continue to protect the water supply and manage existing threats to the lower Colorado River. 1980, we had 24 employees in our police department and a total of seven fleet. Look at the pictures that, in contrast to what our police department looks like today, including more than 44,000 annual calls for service. That's how many times our residents are contacting the police department, or how many times the officers are making self-initiated calls. It doesn't include another 2,500 or so calls for services for animal control, and in addition to the numbers that we see here for calls for police. And we now maintain a fleet of 46 vehicles. Look at our fire. Look at the difference in what our fire trucks look like in 1980, and our fire stations look like in 1980 compared to today, and just the volume of calls. 4 stations with 13 fleet back in 1980, and we had 1,400 annual calls for service. Compare that to 6 stations of 47 fleet and 8,500 annual calls for service through our fire department. So certainly a drastic increase in the services that our residents expect from the city. Some of the details in regarding the election, it's the residents or the voters of Lake Havasu City will be asked to provide cast a yes vote or a no vote. A yes vote will allow the city to adjust its base limit, and this will allow the city to maintain the existing level of services that our residents expect from us today. A no vote would not allow the city to adjust its base limit, and this would result to cuts to services, programs, and projects that the city has planned would be postponed until a later date. It's important to understand that a no vote would restrict the amount of resources used to provide these services, but it would not restrict the amount of dollars or revenues that the city would collect. The city would continue to collect these dollars, however, it would sit in a bank account, if you will, and not be spent on city services. One last picture here is just in terms of population. 1980, we were nearly 16,000 in terms of population, and today we're growing to nearly 54,000 in population. These figures don't include the seasonal residents, that anywhere from 10 to 20,000 this time this year we get from our seasonal residents, or the tourists that come for different events throughout the year. We appreciate the tourists. We appreciate the seasonal residents. They provide us with a strong economic base and support our local businesses and help the city fund the services to our residents. But there's costs that are tied to this, and if the permanent base adjustment is not voted in by the voters, then dollars collected from our seasonal residents as well as our tourists would not be able to spend to provide those services. So the voters will make a determination. Finally, a final slide here is just some points with regards to the permanent base adjustment, and then want to announce to the council and to the public that we have a website that is now live as of today. So if residents go to the city's website / Prop 409, this version of this presentation will be online, as well as documents for the frequently asked questions and and other information that will help the voters decide which direction they should go on August 28th. So with that, Mayor and Council, that concludes my presentation, and would ask that you to consider Resolution 183208.
Any questions? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anybody like to address council on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Motion?
Please.
I move to adopt resolution number 18-3208, proposing a $5 million permanent adjustment to the 1979-1980 base expenditure limitation for Lake Havasu City be submitted to the voters of Lake Havasu City.
Second.
All right, we do have a motion and a second. Is there any final discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. And Cal, again, if you'll give your verbal vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, thank you very much.